So for the next video lecture, so we will continue our discussion still under module 4 entitled Client Acceptance. So we are now in the communication between the predecessor and successor auditor. So in this video lecture, we will introduce the reason behind the importance of having communication between this predecessor and successor auditor, as well as the queries or inquiries that the successor auditor can ask from the predecessor auditor. Okay, so an auditor, this is very important. He should bear in mind that he should not accept an engagement until the communications have been evaluated. Okay, so as mentioned also in our previous video lecture, this queries of the successor auditor on or from the predecessor auditor will help him determine if he will accept or reject the audit engagement, because from this communications or queries, the successor auditor might uncover some of the issues which may affect his performance of the audit engagement or even his expression of opinion. Okay, that's why the auditor, the incoming auditor, or the successor auditor should always seek to have communications first from the predecessor auditor before accepting any audit engagement. Okay, however, an auditor may also make a proposal for an audit engagement even before communicating with the predecessor auditor. So this is also allowed. However, it is still a must and a very important activity for the incoming or the successor auditor to have communications with the predecessor auditor, although he may have any proposals ready. Okay, so the auditor may also wish to advise the prospective client. So for example, in a proposal, that the acceptance cannot be final until the communications have been evaluated. So again, this is how important communication is between these two auditors in the acceptance of the audit engagement. So inquiry of the predecessor auditor is a necessary procedure because the predecessor auditor may be able to provide information that will assist the successor auditor in determining whether to accept the engagement. So we have mentioned also this a while ago, okay, because in most cases, the predecessor auditor will give information that are relevant, okay, in the acceptance or rejection of the audit engagement. So the successor auditor should also bear in mind that, among other things, the predecessor auditor and the client may have any disagreement that may be related to accounting principles, auditing procedures, or similarly significant matters. That's why the client changed their auditor. Okay, so this will also be uncovered during their communication. So the successor auditor will understand why he was hired as the new auditor. Okay, so the successor auditor should request also permission. So this is very important, okay, from the client to make an inquiry of the predecessor auditor prior to the final acceptance of the engagement. So again, we've mentioned this before, that the communication between the predecessor and successor auditor can only proceed after the client have given their consent or permission to do so. So, except as permitted by the rules of the Code of Professional Conduct, the auditor is or the auditor should disclose confidential information obtained in the course of an engagement. Okay, unless the client specifically consents. Or in other words, the predecessor auditor can provide the successor auditor even those confidential information related to the management or to the course of his audit. Okay? Unless, again, this is permitted by the auditor, the client, and the rules of the Code of Professional Conduct or law. Okay? So, meaning if there are no limitations, anything, okay, that is relevant and related to the management and the course of the performance of the audit of the predecessor auditor can be disclosed to the successor auditor. Okay? So thus, the successor auditor should ask, therefore, the client to authorize the predecessor auditor to respond fully to the successor auditor's inquiries or questions. Okay, so again, the amount of information that the successor auditor can get from the predecessor auditor is limited or is consented by the client. Okay, so if a prospective client refused to give permission, okay, to the predecessor auditor to respond or limit the response to the successor auditor about his inquiries as to the reasons and consider the implications of that refusal, or in other words, if the management has refused to give the authority or permission to the predecessor auditor to respond, or if the client limits, okay, the response of the predecessor auditor as to the inquiries of the successor auditor, then this will mean, or this will be considered by the successor auditor as a red flag, okay, of something that is maybe unlawful, or disagreement between the predecessor auditor and the client that he might as well experience if he will accept the audit engagement. So in this case, the auditor or the successor auditor might reject the audit engagement because of this refusal or limitation of the communication between them, okay, with the predecessor auditor. So the successor auditor should also make specific and reasonable inquiries of the predecessor auditor related to the matters that will assist him in determining whether to accept the engagement. So the matters that can be inquired of by the successor auditor from the predecessor auditor are the following. So number one, okay, the successor auditor can ask about the information that might bear the integrity of the management. So in this case, the successor auditor will know if there are any relationship or connections between the management or the entity and with other parties with any unlawful activities. So in this case, he might consider rejecting the engagement because his name might be dragged, okay, with that unlawful activities of or unlawful activities where the management or the entity is connected with. Okay, so that's why he should consider also this type of information. Okay, another information that the successor auditor can ask from the predecessor auditor is any disagreements with the management as to the accounting principles, auditing procedures, or similar significant matters that have existed in the previous audit. Okay, so with this, the auditor will know if what is the attitude of the management or the client in terms of the audit procedures that will be taken place. Okay, so in that case, he might consider accepting the challenge or will reject it because he will encounter the same disagreements as well in the future. Okay, that's why he needs also to have these types of information. Okay, another is communication to audit committees or others with equivalent authority and responsibility regarding any fraud, illegal acts by the clients, and internal control related matters. Okay, so again, this is where also disagreements might arise. So that's why he needs to know the matters related to these things as well. Okay, so another information is the predecessor auditor's understanding as to the reasons why there is the change of auditors. So why do they have to hire the successor auditor? Why does the predecessor auditor will not continue to audit the future FS of the management or the entity? Okay, so the reason may be acceptable or not. Okay, so this is why he may also consider this knowledge. Okay, another is the predecessor or the successor auditor may also wish to consider other reasonable inquiries, okay, provided these are related to the management and to the previous audit engagement by the predecessor auditor. Okay, another is the predecessor auditor's understanding also of the nature of the company's relationship and transactions with related parties and significant unusual transactions, because in this case, again, there might be some unlawful transactions that may exist in this connection that might impair the auditor's independence or even his ability to perform the audit procedures. Okay, and the predecessor auditor should respond also promptly and fully on the basis of the known facts to the successor auditor's reasonable inquiries. Okay, again, this will be or the information that can be taken from the predecessor auditor is permitted or limited by the client. Okay, so however, should the predecessor auditor decide, okay, maybe due to unusual circumstances such as there are impending or threatened or potential litigation he undergoes with the client, or any disciplinary proceedings or other unusual circumstances where in that cases or instances he cannot respond fully to the inquiries of the successor auditor. So in this case, the predecessor auditor should clearly state the reason why he cannot respond promptly or his response is only limited, so that the successor auditor will understand why. Okay, and also this can become the basis of the successor auditor if he is going to accept the audit engagement or not. It will add to the factors that he will consider. Okay, so if the successor auditor receives limited responses, so its implications, he will also consider this in deciding whether to accept or reject the audit engagement. So he will evaluate it. Okay, so so that is the communications or the reason why the successor auditor needs to communicate with the predecessor auditors and the types of information that he can get from the predecessor auditor. So that would be all for this video lecture.